One can almost say that the choreographed movement through space, punctuated by moments of pause, this itinerary of rotation and frontality that we've been discussing, itself constitutes another point of the new architecture. Le Corbusier will later give this principle a name. He calls it the architectural promenade. You enter. The architectural spectacle at once offers itself to the eye. You follow an itinerary, and the perspectives develop with great variety, developing a play of light on the walls or making pools of shadow. Large windows open up views of the exterior, where the architectural unity is reasserted. Here, reborn for our modern eye, are historic architectural discoveries: the pilotis, the long windows, the roof garden, the glass facade. Le Corbusier is describing the Villa Savoye at Poissy. While at the Villa La Roche, the spatial articulations of the interior were conceived in relation to an exterior that was still itself plastic and still could move around and be varied. Now at the Villa Savoye, the villa has become a total object through which the will of the epoch could be affirmed. The signs of purist composition that we saw in the prospects of frontality at La Roche and through the kind of energetic swirling at Garches here take on a more material consistency. At the same time, the prismatic envelope of Garches is reasserted to contain the equally variability of surfaces at La Roche. The architectural solutions of this elementary ribbon window of the enclosed terrace become a kind of insistence of this total object. And at the same time, while we have this kind of functional minimalism of the interior, almost like railway sleeping cars, like ship cabins, like airplane cockpits, at the same time, there is an architectural solution that shows its real concern to be the relation of people to these new conditions. The Villa Savoye is the epitome of the functional stratification of the section, of raising the pilotis, freeing the ground plane for movement, for transportation, for recreation, for vegetation. The house above is completely ordered and controlled, while the earth below is free and available for collective occupation, for collective use. And now, for the first time at the Villa Savoye, is a coupling of objets types, of which the Villa Savoye is only one. For example, the automobile, itself a paradigm of the objet type, now comes into the site and moves under the building through the pilotis to interact spatially and functionally with the house itself. At the lower level, at the entrance level, the curved surface of the industrialized glass, which defines the volume of the entry hall, is itself determined by the curving radius, the turning radius of the automobile. Here, two object types come together and interact. As you penetrate that glass wall and enter the entry hall, you see first, on the one side, a ramp that leads you up to the piano nobile, up to the main floor. Adjacent to the ramp is a sink assembled together with one of the pilotis, a very large industrial ramp, and a table attached to the pilotis. There's a kind of assemblage of objet type. The sink itself is a mass-produced, highly refined, functional vessel for cleansing that stands as almost like it's one of the objet type of his purist paintings. And the sink is juxtaposed, like in an assemblage, with this industrial lamp, which at first seems out of scale. It doesn't seem domestic at first, but it kind of gets domesticated in its assemblage by its interaction with the small table, with the pilotis, and with the sink. But the combination of sink and ramp, as unusual as that is, it's not just two industrial types coming together. The place that you find the combination of sink and ramp is at the entry to a religious building, like a mosque or a synagogue or a church, where you first cleanse yourself and then enter slowly and ascend to a sacred space. The juxtaposition of these various object types creates a kind of metonymic relationship or an assemblage that makes connectivities that extend the domain of the house itself out into the industrial world. The architectural promenade begins at the moment of stasis where the sink and the ramp have come together at the entry. Remember, the name architectural promenade is the name Le Corbusier gave to this itinerary of movement, rotation, and frontality through a building. In the case of the Savoye, the ramp becomes the instrument of that architectural promenade. And it operates in two ways. First of all, it operates as a path or as a space, a vertical space that cuts through the horizontal slabs. In the domino system, the horizontal slabs are determinate, and you move through those through a stairway or other circulations. But the ramp cuts through those horizontal slabs and establishes a vertical slice of space that unites the slabs in a different way than the stair. Now, it is the case that even at the Villa Savoye, there's also a stair that provides a parallel but different kind of vertical circulation through the horizontal slabs. And that combination of ramp and stair, they're actually very, very close to one another, and they connect with each other as you move through. That's also an important apparatus of the architectural promenade. So as you get on the ramp and go through and then turn around and come back still inside the house, but at the top of the second part of the ramp, you reach a moment where the stair has also come up and made a landing. So the ramp and the stair connect at that point. At that landing, you have a choice. Either you go into the main living space of the house, or you move through the glass curtain wall outside into a very large terrace. That living space and the terrace interact in a very porous and transparent way. There's almost no distinction between the space of the living room and the space of the terrace. And indeed, in good weather, you could slide the glass doors open and it would become the same space. The ramp then moves from an interior ramp into an exterior ramp that looks out onto the terrace. It again loops back on itself one more time, and you get to the top of the ramp, which is at the highest point of a second roof terrace, where Le Corbusier put a warped kind of curvilinear surface punctured by a single aperture that frames a view out into the distant fields and woods beyond. So you've moved through an environment of industrialized glass, of industrialized lamps, of automobiles, into a more refined space, but still a kind of minimalist space of white walls, out onto a terrace, and then moving up into an area that you get glimpses now of the natural landscape, and then finally to the final moment of pause at this aperture where the landscape opens up. In Villa La Roche and Villa Garches, there is this itinerary of rotation and frontality. There, the rotation is initiated by the surfaces of the walls themselves, by balconies puncturing through the walls, by apertures in the walls, by a curvilinear surface that comes and confronts us and makes a kind of pressure on the space. So the wall's surfaces control that or apply that rotation. In the Villa Savoye, the ramp becomes the armature that more immediately and strictly controls that rotation. But it still opens up variability. Now it's not just the variability of the walking through the space, but it's a variability of vision that is constantly framed by the interaction of the ramp as an armature with the vertical walls and apertures as framing devices. And as you move through the house, moments not so much strictly frontal, but now framed in a more variable way. Moments are framed and pauses are caused because of the ramp itself and its interaction with other parts of the house. The ramp is the primary device that Le Corbusier uses to connect different parts of the house, setting up these interactions with different parts of the house. The ramp diagrams potentials for occupation, but the ramp is also a device for connecting with conditions outside the house, what Corbusier would consider the eternal goods like access to the earth, access to the sky, open air for physical health. All these are made possible by what he called a machine for living, a machine, this object type, the house itself, that diagrams potentials for occupation. The diagram, which is the house, constructs a world, but it's not a world just an immediate world. It also is a world yet to come. The machine for living constructs a real world that is yet to come, a new type of reality, a reality that will find its ultimate fulfillment in a future. In 1930, Le Corbusier pondered over the houses he had built over the previous decade. And he singled out what he called compositions, which are the sort of different ways that the houses had responded to the initial domino diagram. He contrasted what he called the somewhat facile, picturesque, and hectic genre of the Villa La Roche to the very difficult design of the prism of Garches, which then led, he said, to the spiritual satisfaction which came at Villa Savoye, the very easy, practical, combinable type, which was the synthesis of the genre that had begun with the domino. It was the machine for living in the new world.